Omicron. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Omicron. You know, at least it's not, at least they broke out of the whole Greek letter name thing. So yeah, that was last week's big delivery of news. I guess it might have actually been a little bit beforehand. It was before last week, and then it sort of took off last week. It was like, I think the news dropped on dropped. That's what they say about things now. On Friday before last week, but last week was the week of Omicron, and I have to say, boy. Well, I mean, that's what a pandemic is, right? I mean, we got tired of it. We sort of don't want it to continue. So it's been going on for a while now. We don't really want to. We don't really want to. It's time to move on to the next thing. The news cycle goes pretty fast. We lose interest in things pretty quickly. We don't really expect to have to be dealing with something for coming up on 2 years pretty soon, right? So. A little bit tough in that respect, I would have to say. Of course, last week was the Neptune station. And with the Neptune station, you tend not to get really accurate information, or even when you get accurate information, remember this was last week's message, right? You may get accurate information, but you don't evaluate it in proportion. And so you think things are much better or much worse than they might otherwise be. And Neptune stations, very typically, up until COVID, Neptune stations often correlated with fears about some disease. There was always some flu breaking out in China that could cause a pandemic or something, and we'd all be freaked out about it on a Neptune station. And then like a week or two later, the story would just disappear. In fact, when COVID broke in early 2020, one of the things that I thought of right away of thinking, oh, this is a serious thing, was the fact that there was really no Neptunian activity around that time. It was not a Neptunian thing. Wow, this is coming with the Saturn and Pluto sort of energy. It wasn't Neptunian. I think maybe Omicron, while it's real enough, our reactions to it were really, well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, if it is much more contagious, then it is something that will have to be dealt with. Certainly the financial markets were just all over the place last week, just, real roller coaster ride. And not that that's necessarily the thing that you look at most, but they're very good indicators of where public sentiment is. They're very good indicators of our collective fascinations, our collective fears, our collective optimism, right? So you don't have to necessarily be looking at it from the same perspective, but you look at the financial markets, they tell you an awful lot about where we are as a collective. And last week, we were all over the place. That's where we were. There was no place we weren't. We, of course, also had the solar eclipse on Saturday. This isn't about recap. This is about going forward. So we have some things to talk about for this week going forward. And yet maybe I ramble a little bit about last week. And after all, with Neptune and Mercury square to each other on Tuesday, December 7th, that Neptunian energy certainly continues. And so what we have for Monday and Tuesday is, maybe going on a bit of a ramble. And it's a time when precise information is liable to be lacking, where communication can go awry. You could think of it as Mercury retrograde raised to a power if you want. So Monday, Tuesday, and maybe getting into Wednesday, we have energy that is really not conducive to practical plans and decisions and so on. Information can leak out. You can say more than you intend to. You can hear more than is actually said. You can perceive things that weren't intended. All of that kind of thing. It's not necessarily that out and out deception is part of the picture, although I wouldn't say that that's impossible. If you have a little deceiving to do, this week is not a terrible opportunity for you. It's not a terribly bad it's a good opportunity to do something. Maybe anyway, sometimes you have to sort of, massage facts a little bit, and that's kind of the energy of this week. But it isn't even necessarily the kind of thing where folks will intentionally do that. You can just sort of buy into a story that is sounds a little bit better than the truth might otherwise be. Now, with Mercury in Sagittarius, the sign of beliefs and belief systems, and Neptune out there in Pisces, what we have is this sort of, okay, the facts don't really match up with what I'm thinking things should be, but over time we're going to get enough facts that they'll show up. So that sort of Mercury in Sagittarius, a sort of faith in your beliefs, and the facts, well, they'll come along someday, I'm sure. The date is not all in, but let's jump ahead. This is the kind of energy that certainly pervades the early part of this week, Monday, Tuesday, maybe sort of sliding into Wednesday a little bit, but certainly Monday and Tuesday. And then, because the sun is square Neptune on the 12th, which is next Monday, next Sunday, Mercury square Neptune. So I'm being vague, but you get the idea. I demonstrate my own points. The sort of the vibe continues, so there is this lack of precision. This is a great time for meditation. This is a great time for creative projects. This is a great time for just using your imagination. This is a great time for, sort of connecting with higher realms and things like that. Not a great time for Saturnian stuff. Now, oddly enough, it's not really odd, I suppose, but on Monday and into, on Monday, we have the moon in Capricorn, which really encourages work. Moon in Capricorn would love to get you to work. Yeah, work on something. I watered the plants this morning and fed them. That's work. No, not really. I want to work on practicing bass today. Things like that are good, but you don't want to necessarily think, well, I think I wouldn't work on your car or anything like that with this kind of astrological weather. If you have something to do, and we have stuff to do, I would think Wednesday, Thursday would be a good time. As we head in towards Friday, we have the waxing first quarter moon. It is conjunct Neptune. It is tightly conjunct Neptune, again reinforcing the same theme of Neptunian vagueness. So I would say Wednesday, Thursday, if you've got anything practical to do that absolutely has to get done, then do it. Otherwise, more or less, I'd wait until next week if you can. Now, other stuff that is happening this week. Well, you'd like to wait. You'd like to hold off on things because you're listening to what I'm saying about things that are not great for doing at the beginning part of the week. But we also have Mars square to Jupiter, and that Mars square Jupiter happens at the earliest hours of Wednesday. So it's a very strong energy on Tuesday. Well, what are you going to do about this? You're still under the Mercury-Neptune fog, and Mars and Jupiter, it's like that's a jump into action kind of aspect. Now, Jupiter's out in Aquarius where it's sort of holding the big picture for us. That's good. Mars, however, is in his home sign of Scorpio, getting down the end of Scorpio at 26 degrees, and actually heading towards Sagittarius next week. So Mars in Scorpio, particularly at the end, is a little protective, right? So there's this kind of reactivity that we're looking at with this aspect. I mean, Mars Jupiter can be a real let's go, jump ahead type of thing. But with Mars in Scorpio, it's a little bit more, it's like, I'm going to be careful. And then Jupiter says, well, okay, let's be real careful. My guess is that this is a real square between these two planets. Jupiter in Aquarius wants to hold the big picture, wants to, be optimistic and not be reactive, whereas Mars in Scorpio is reactive. On the collective level, this is really between the we can all do this together and, oh no, I'm doing my thing. On our personal, within each of us, there's a little bit of that too. There's the I'm going to expand and go where I want to go on the one hand, and then there's that, well, maybe I'll just shutter myself up and be careful kind of feeling on the other. It's liable to result in some reactions during the early part of the week. By Wednesday afternoon, no matter where you are, by Wednesday afternoon, the energy of that aspect will have pretty much dissipated, although the moon in Aquarius on the 9th, on Thursday, well, really on throughout the rest of Wednesday, will sort of stir that up into earliest Thursday morning. So by Thursday, you're really in the clear with that. Again, Wednesday, Thursday probably is the time when you want to try to get something done if you have to get something done. Now, also on Saturday, we have Venus meeting Pluto. Now, Venus-Pluto aspects, the beginning and end of the cycle each year, because Venus meets with Pluto, well, once a year would be the thing to say, but not quite this time around. The Venus-Pluto cycle has a lot to do with, getting to the bare bones of things in terms of relationship. Also has a lot to do with getting to the bare bones of things in terms of finances, values, valuables, and things like that. I would take that as a message this week, okay? Whether you're looking at finances, whether you're looking at aesthetics, whether you're looking at, artistic projects and things like that, or whether you're looking at relationships, you're getting a big piece of information this week. Maybe, it's Pluto, so maybe it's kind of subtle, but you're getting a big piece of information. There's something going on here. Sun, that Neptunian energy makes it hard to know, but also Venus is going to retrograde in, well, really next week, I think, so the 19th. Venus is going to retrograde. And so she's really stationing for her retrograde very close to Pluto. Now, this is a good time for me to mention, well, like earlier would have been a better time to mention because probably a lot of people had stopped, but we're going to have a special video on Venus retrograde in Capricorn, and that is going to be out either later this week or next week. Now, you could just check back, or you could subscribe and put on the little bell notifications, and then when the video comes out, you'll know about it. And later this month, we are going to have an extra video, not just a forecast, but an extra video on the nodes of the moon going on to the Scorpio-Taurus axis, which happens really at the end of the year. So you can check that out. You can also go back and watch or maybe just watch the video on Jupiter and Pisces. But I digress. Venus meeting Pluto, this is giving you information that you don't yet know what to do with. It's a story. It's a story that's going to play out through March. So it's Venus retrograde is happening. Venus retrograde next to Pluto says there's big things happening, but you're not quite sure what they are. So to summarize, we have a very Neptunian energy that began last week and will continue through about the middle of next week. And so accept it. There is a fair amount of push to get things done with Mars and Jupiter and the first quarter moon. Do stuff, but don't necessarily commit to things. And when it comes to finances, relationship, and things like that, you're getting great information that will be valuable to you someday. And like and subscribe. Now, that's all you need to know.